I actually sat down yesterday and I went through and I created like a huge primer for what I think is a really good introduction to Digimon as a whole. If you have just started playing Digimon or you don't know about Digimon, like let's imagine you just tune into the stream and you're like, hey, I'm waiting on Union Arena or One Piece or whatever, but this Digimon's on right now. And if you're interested in actually what's happening, you want to like kind of understand or dip your toe in, I think this will be a really good primer for that. The idea is to release it so that people can just like use it to watch if they don't know much about Digimon. I think it's good to like have something that beginners can use to like quickly hop into the game and understand what's happening in matches and see why they're so exciting and fun. And so a little bit of background. Yeah, Worlds is happening this weekend, 15th to the 16th. It says they say Tokyo, but every time you hear about an event that happens in Tokyo, it's technically in Chiba, which is like the state or the province to the right of Tokyo. It's like right next to it. And it's in a place called Makuhari Messe, which is like a huge venue location. Like when you talk about like Tokyo Game Show, that happens at Makuhari Messe. It's in Tokyo. Players are, for the first time, going to be using the same format, the most recent format all around the world, which is BT20. Congrats to the folks over in the West. Hope you guys are getting your hands on all those fantastic cards that came out in BT20 and the tamer half or tamer's half of BT19. So you got like your Gallantmon full power, Sakyamon full power, and Terriermon full power question mark. Some cool info. You can actually find a link of all the players who qualified for the finals this year, the World Championship finals anyway. Bandai's website. They actually posted up and you can see the event that people qualified in, where they're from, and the deck they used to win. So back in June of last year at the Grand or the Cycle 1 Grand Asia Open, wow, that's a lot. We had Furious, who won from Thailand using Vaccine Armor. Kurova from Singapore, who got, I think for this event, just top 4 in general got to qualify. So second was Kurova, who got second with Dodogoromon. Robo from Japan with Mirage Galgamon. Everybody booing and hissing in the comment section right now. I can hear them. And Doraku, he used Galaxy Toolbox. And you can actually look at their decks. That's kind of crazy. Keep in mind that these are what they were at the time they were built. They're not like current. These aren't like the current decks are going to be using, but the decks that they qualified with. And they can change those because that'd be awful if you couldn't change and you won early on. But yeah, the strange thing is like Galaxy Toolbox doesn't really change that much. Just the top end, I think. It's for the China finals. We got folks from China, Europe finals. I didn't know only 2 people from Europe actually qualified. That kind of sucks. I wish there was more. I think it'd be really cool if at least 4 people from like every big region qualified. That way we could also run like a 4v4 or like a 5v5. That'd be nice. China got 2 more. Damn. China did get 4. My bad. North American finals. Onion Moment, Super Duper Roach. Brother, change your name. Please. 7th grade Demon Lords, Leviamon, and Purple Hybrid. Truly the purple game in America. Asia Finals, we got... So the Asia Finals, don't be misled. There's Japan, and then there's like Asia. And so all the other countries in Asia fight for spots in the Asia Final. So Japan is not in this event. It says Asia Final, but it's like Southeast Asia Final, really. So we had the Rusted from Malaysia running Takemika, and Vaughn from Indonesia running Purple Hybrid. Truly a purple year, if nothing else. Latin America Finals, Alejandro with Purple Hybrid. Well, Korea actually got one in there. Nice. Okay. Yeah. For folks who've seen the video on the channel recently about Korea, they run 2 versions of the game, which is kind of wild. But I'm assuming this was the Japanese version in Korea. So Mirage Galgamon won that. I think that was a big meme because we saw the guy post up the band Mirage, and he made it a playmat actually in Korea as well as Europe. Oceania, Gallantmon, let's go. This almost was Fendelugamon too. And then just a couple weeks ago, we had the Japan finals. So this is just Japan for Cycle 2. And the top 6 from this event qualified. So we got Umino, who won with Blue-Green, Imperial Dramon. It's crazy how if you just put in one Hexabomon, they change the name to DNA Digivolve instead of Imperial Dramon. Momboru, who used Magnamon. Hina, who used Magnamon. Well, Japan really, really believes in blue. Kerorin with Mirage Galgamon. I think Hina was the guy that we saw brick completely and couldn't find a single Magnamon X antibody all game. I think that was him. Mujiko with Imperial Dramon as well, and then Koto with Tyrant Kabuterimon. Just in my memory, I thought that a lot of the Imperial Dramon decks were really represented this year, but it's mostly like Leviamon and Purple Hybrid. Leviamon sure is a deck. The Japan deck name is wrong. I guess we can just look at the deck. Let's see. That is indeed not Magnamon. You're right. That is Purple Hybrid. They definitely shit the bed on that one, huh? This is also Purple Hybrid. Whoa, Magnamon looking real different nowadays, folks. Not sure how that happens. Are all of them? No, Umino definitely qualified with Imperial Dramon. Yeah, I remember that. Mirage? This is that new BT21 Magnamon? Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Kettering with Imperial Virus. He was cooking, too. When they had him on stream, that fella was schmoovin'. Mujiko. They were correct with the Imperial Dramon players. And then Tyrant. Yeah, Tyrant's right. Okay, so downplaying the Magnamon is Bandai. Is this evidence that he won't be banned? He won't be restricted? Really innovating out here. BT20, yeah. Only Japan. But yeah, back to my TED Talk. Yeah, you can look at all of the players who qualified if you want to take a look at where they came from and like who's actually playing and like, you know, how they qualified, what their road looks like. And then if you want a complete rule set for Worlds, they actually posted that up on their website as well. I think that I actually cover a little bit of this in the next slide. So let's go over here. Yeah. So the format for Worlds is a little underwhelming, I think. I would have hoped that it would have been a little bit longer, but it seems like they're trying to quickly wrap the tournament up. Maybe that's One Piece's fault. I'd like to blame it on One Piece. They're a really good scapegoat, so we blame it on One Piece this time. The tournament has 2 phases, Swiss phase and then like the top cut, which is single elimination. And then the Swiss phase and the single elimination top cut is BO1 until the final match or the third place match, which is really, really sad, I think. I think there's a great chance to have a BO3 all throughout the day. You have only 24 players here. 5 rounds Swiss on one day and then... I guess 5 rounds Swiss plus like the first 2 rounds of single elim. That's still not a lot. Of the 24 qualified players, only 8 advanced to top cut. So they'll play those for, I think it's 5 rounds. Someone double check me. But I think it's 5 rounds Swiss. And the players with the best records will qualify for top cut. Yeah, imagine you break like in top 4. That would be tragic. So luck is definitely a factor here. Speaking of, the person who asked me what decks do you think I'll see, well, here's my answer right here. I think these are some of the popular decks that you'll see going into a format that uses up to the BT20 cards. I think the weekend they're at the event, they actually are releasing some new cards in one of the limited booster sets, but I don't think they're allowed in the tournament. So there's like 6 or so promo cards that I don't think they can use, even though they'll be like around. So let's talk a little bit about each of these 7 decks very quickly. And so keep in mind that these are made for beginners and for people who are just like trying to really quickly wrap their head around what's happening in the game. So right now, Royal Knights, a deck that was really strong in BT13, is back on the up and up in BT20. And the idea for the deck is basically like each turn you can play one big Digimon for a reduced play cost, and if it survives, then you put it underneath your King Drasil in the breeding area, and then later you can play this Omnimon right here, and he can bring all those Digimon underneath the King Drasil back onto the field at the same time. They all attack, and then you win the game. Super straightforward. Now, some of the key cards for the deck are the new Omekamon, which you see here. This guy's so good. He's a blocker. He's like the craziest defense card, or one of the craziest defense cards I've ever seen, and it's very easy to get him on the field thanks to a lot of the cards in the deck. You've also got the Omnimon, which I mentioned before. This is like your win button. So basically, once you have enough sources underneath your King Drasil or enough big dudes under your King Drasil, you can just play him and flood the board and then just punch with a bunch of big dudes to win. And then finally, Magnamon X antibody. Whoo boy. The French menace. You know, we're putting tariffs. We're putting tariffs on France. They got to be stopped. This guy is crazy. He's like the ultimate offense and defense card. And when you're like really low about to lose, he can be like your smash in case of emergency button where your Mekamon can pop out and then he just becomes the Magnamon X immediately and just wipes your opponent's board. Also, he has this really interesting effect where he can attack twice, or he can let another Digimon attack without suspending, which is pretty crazy. So some of the strengths of the deck: lots of powerful effects to protect you and remove your opponent's Digimon. Lots of ways to like get rid of threats on board and keep your security safe until you can get to your winning turn. Like I mentioned, the new Omekamon and the 3-color Omnimon X antibody can wipe a full board in a pinch, and it feels bad, man. When you get hit by that and you're like, I completely forgot about that. I should have remembered this effect. Also, the deck can't evolve on its own turn, which might seem like a downside, but because one of the effects of the King Drasil is that you cannot evolve, which is, I guess, a decent enough balance. But that effect is only on your turn. On your opponent's turn, when they're attacking you, you can use ace cards to evolve onto some of your big dudes for crazy strong effects. Just keep in mind that if those ace cards get removed, then you suffer the overflow penalty. And if you slot 2 of the same ace card underneath the King Drasil, when you use your Omnimon, he can only let you play one. And so the second ace card will actually go to the trash and you will suffer the overflow penalty and you will usually lose your turn immediately. So you have to be really careful that you don't stack 2 ace cards underneath your Kingdrasil, because if you do, or 2 of the same ace card basically. Because if you do, pretty much over. Some of the weaknesses, the deck is weak to cards that prevent them from reducing their Digimon's play costs. Again, the deck does like to play Digimon for reduced costs, and there are little fellows like the level 3 Floodgate Chikurimon, who is a black Digimon, and the purple level 3 Floodgate Psychemon, who both prevent reducing play costs, which can be very problematic. And also, you typically only get like 1 to 2 actions per turn. It is a control style deck, and so you don't have super flexible like 1 memory plays at your disposal all the time. You'll only get those later in the game, and early on you just kind of just like play card in turn, play card in turn. So that's Royal Knights. Next up is Velgr Loop. Whew boy, I was digging on this one. It's really hard I realize it's really difficult to explain what Velgr Loop does without going into too much detail. So this one's kind of scant, but I think it's for the sake of not confusing people. The game plan is basically to play Tamers and not Digimon like the mat you see here. And then you can evolve your Duskmon into the Tamers and then that Duskmon into Velgramon in the trash, who mills cards from both players' decks, and he can delete Digimon. Now, the reason it's called Velgramon Loop is because once the Velgramon dies, the Duskmon's effect lets you take a Tamer in the trash, which could be the one you just died with, and play back on the board. And the Mat Ishida Tamer lets you grab back a Velgramon, or excuse me, a Duskmon, to redo the entire combo again. And then it also uses cards like Jack Raid for more memory, like free memory, and extending offense. So some of the key cards, like I just kind of talked about, Mat Ishida, who lets you grab back an option or Digimon, which is an amazing card, which may be restricted after this weekend. Duskmon, who I just mentioned, who lets you evolve into a Velgramon in the trash, and also lets you play a Tamer when he's deleted. And then Velgramon, who kind of cleans up your opponent's board, makes swings, and mill cards at the same time. Really the trifecta of Velgr Loop. Strengths: very quick and powerful offense and really good removal. Velgramon doesn't delete one Digimon. He deletes all the Digimon of the lowest level. So yeah, he can like wipe out all your level 3s or all your level 4s, and his effect lets him delete any purple level 4 on the board. And because Duskmon can change Digimon's colors, you can actually change one of your opponent's Digimon who's level 4 lower to purple, and then use that to delete all of their lowest level Digimon. So you delete the purple level 4 or lower, and then whatever's remaining gets deleted as well. But usually they choose the Velgramon himself, and that's how you loop. If the offensive route doesn't work out, you just have the option of simply milling your opponent's deck out completely, and if you can't get to their security fast enough. So you'll see sometimes like players have a couple of tech cards like a Pokemon or something else in order to quickly mill cards over the course of a turn, so that in case they can't win in one single turn, they will just try to deck you out so you can't draw on the following turn and then you lose. And weaknesses. Yeah, I was scratching my head on this one. You'll notice that as I go through a lot of these, the weaknesses are quite scant because, yeah. Anyway, any cards that affect Tamers or the trash can be really problematic for this deck. And that's true. There's not a lot of cards in the game that do affect Tamers or hate on Tamers specifically. There's a couple of key ones that I think folks use, but there's by far and large, most cards affect Digimon and not Tamers. We can't be killing all the kids, unless you're Black or Greymon, but that's a different story. So that's Velgr Loop. Next up is Imperial Digimon, deck that won in Japan, like I mentioned before. So the basic game plan for these guys is to play a free level 3 Digimon every other turn, or every turn, thanks to their Davis and Kin Tamer. This really is like the crux of the deck, the keystone, and you can use that free level 3 you get to play every single turn because of them with a Digimon and Raise. Again, quickly DNA Digivolve it into a Piledramon. So you evolve 2 Digimon into 1 together, and this guy is crazy. Piledramon lets you make multiple swings. He's got jamming for the most part, and after this, their level 6s are just really strong defensive cards to hamper your opponent in a bunch of different ways. The Imperial Digimon Dragon mode, the Fighter mode, lots of removal, the Hexablaumon as well, we'll talk about in a second. Just lots of really good level 6s at their disposal. Now, some of the key cards, definitely, like I said before, the crux of the deck is Davis and Ken. These guys, if you see them early, it's so good. If you see them late, it's not great. Next up is Piledramon, who he really is like the offensive guy in the deck, but he can also do some really annoying things to your opponent's board, where he suspends all of their Digimon who have less sources than him, and they can't unsuspend for a turn. And then whenever they try to like destroy him with an effect, he can partition into the 2 level 4s underneath him, and so it makes the boards really sticky. If you have another Piledramon in hand, you can just go right back into another one thanks to the partition giving you 2 level 4s immediately on the board. And then finally, Return to the Primogenitor is an option card that came out actually after the initial release of these core cards, but it's a fantastic option card because it lets you evolve her cheaply, and it gives you some really good defensive tools whenever your opponent tries to delete one of your like level 5 or level 6 Digimon. But anyway, some of the strengths of Imperial Dramon are, like I said before, Partition, where whenever you try to destroy the Pile-Dramon through effects, and it pops out the 2 level 4s, makes your boards really sticky, so your opponent has to do a lot to actually like wipe the board entirely. Keep in mind, you can attack the Digimon and Partition doesn't work, but most removal is like based on effects these days, so yeah, the Partition can be quite useful. Also, the level 6s can include Hexablaumon. Now remember when I talked about Velgr Loop a moment ago, or in a different video, and I said that there's not a lot of cards in the game that hate on Tamers? Well, he is one of them, and he also can prevent Digimon with fewer sources than him from suspending on your opponent's turn, which is really, really annoying because you come from a Pile-Dramon who has a lot of sources. So going into a Hexablaumon makes it almost impossible for most decks to actually get over him. So with your Digimon like completely locked out from suspending, if they have to attack to do an effect, then they're just kind of sitting there as lame ducks. The most chatters have called it the most belligerent deck once its resources are established. But yeah, on the same vein of like establishing resources, the weaknesses here, not seeing that Davis and Kin Tamer really slows the deck down considerably. Also, if your opponent does have ways to get rid of Tamers, then it could also be problematic because you can't like keep a Davis and Kin Tamer up, so you can't keep getting free level 3s to search through your deck to find all your pieces. We saw that in, I think it was Australia, where we saw Imperial Dramon versus Galacticmon, and Galacticmon kept shooting the children from space. It's like, destroy a Tamer, poof, play another Tamer, destroy a Tamer, poof, it just kept going. He would not stop. He hated children. All right, so that's the first half of Vmon-based decks. The next one is Magnamon Armor, which honestly, if you're a beginner for the game, this guy is probably right up your alley. The game plan is to really quickly just get to a level 6 Magnamon X antibody, the shiny gold fella you see right here, and then whenever you remove either your or your opponent's security, you essentially become the single strongest card in the entire game for a turn. Like, very difficult to do anything to this guy once his effect is established. Once you pop one security off one side, he becomes that guy. He becomes him. And then after that, even trying to like punch through him, because lots of the cards in the deck have Armor Purge, they can keep Digimon on board by just popping off the top card in the stack whenever they would be deleted. Some of the key cards, definitely the boss monster of the deck, the Magnamon X antibody. Like I said before, when security is removed, he becomes like the single strongest card in the game because he unsuspends, gets plus 3000 DP, he gets stronger, and he becomes completely invincible to effects for a turn. And he also has Blocker and Armor Purge, so you've got to do a lot to get rid of this guy. Another really good card in the deck is Magnamon. So this is one that has some really good disruption effects. Whether it's checked in security or you just evolve into it, it can source strip opponent's Digimon or bounce them to hand, and when checked in security, it can de-digivolve, which is actually very nice. And then finally, if you're having trouble actually attacking your opponent's security, you can use this Flame Dramon card, who can actually redirect his attacks into the strongest Digimon on your opponent's side of the board who's active, and the act of changing your attack target makes your opponent draw a card off of their security. So that's one of the ways that they can reduce security, so then you can get your Magnamon X antibody's invincibility effect online. Some of the strengths of the deck, Magnamon X is incredibly difficult to deal with, and he can be made very quickly because the deck most decks evolve into a level 3, level 4, level 5, and level 6. Magnamon X antibody goes level 3, level 4, level 6. Yeah, card game math. Anyway, additionally, they have a really wide selection of tech cards that they can deploy, which makes it really hard for you to prep for everything this deck can throw at you. There's just so many good cards that they can add into the deck to make it even scarier, either offensively or defensively. It's just really tough. And some of the new cards in BT20 are even crazier. Like the Jesmon GX is an incredible card because if they set up with a Jesmon GX, and you can't take it out that single turn it comes down, you lose the game. Also, many of the cards in the deck can actually buff Magnamon X antibody. So if you take a look in the past screen, his DP is 12,000, which is a respectable number in the game. And when his effect is online, he gets plus 3,000 more, so he becomes 15,000, which is a big number. But there are some cards like the Vmon you see on the right here who have an inheritance effect that says this Digimon gets plus 2,000 DP. So these kinds of DP plus effects can really stack and make that big wall even bigger. Some of the weaknesses, big DP attackers, there are some cards like Gallantmon X antibody who can attack, unsuspend, and then attack again. they can dismantle your Magnamon X antibody, even through his Armor Purge, where you just pop off the top card only and you get to keep the stack. Doing that twice, he doesn't really leave you with much. And also, boards that can make multiple attacks. Like, sometimes, instead of just punching with one person or one Digimon at the same time, your opponent just goes wide and they just keep making lots of attacks. And your Magnamon can only block like 2 Digimon in a turn. So they can go wide and just overwhelm you by sheer numbers. Or sheer number of attacks. But yeah, if you're like a beginner in the game, I think watching Magnamon Armor fight is actually really simple. It's really easy to follow what's going on, I believe. Ooh, Galaxy Toolbox. Now, on the other end of the spectrum is Galaxy Toolbox, where they have a lot of combos, thanks to these 2 cards we'll talk about in just a moment, that make it kind of tough to follow the game. But for the most part, just assume that the players are playing correctly. So the game plan here is they use a set of cards called Light Fang and Nightclaw trait cards, who let them get to a level 5 really quickly. And from there, because the deck utilizes red and blue cards, and those 2 cards can evolve interchangeably, despite the color differences, they have access to pretty much every good level. Actually, they have access to pretty much every level 6 in the game that is red or blue, or can evolve from red or blue, which means they just have this like wide array of options at the level 6s where they can prepare for pretty much anything you can throw at them. And then in a pinch, they can slam down a Garudamon Ace, which is level 5, lets them play a Tamer, and that pretty much gets them to a level 6 instantly in a turn. And early on, that could be a really, really, really painful play. On the receiving end, by the way. Chatters are calling it the criminal deck, and EX5 was a mistake. But some of the key cards are Sunmon, rather, the level 2 you see here, the red guy. He says that whenever a card in your Digimon stack goes from the top to the bottom of the sources, you can evolve at cost -1. And you can combine that with the Lunamon here, who, start of your main phase, lets you can pop a Digimon on your board back to hand and gain 2 memory. And then also, when you cycle a card from the top of your stack to the bottom of your stack, you also gain 2 memory again. So this thing prints so much memory. And then finally, released after the core cards was a new card called the Galgamon, and he gives you lots of free card draw, lots of free memory, and also jamming and sources. So now, whatever you get to as a level 6, you don't have to worry about checking Digimon with big DPs, because jamming will always just win the security battle if you check security with jamming. And some of the strengths of the deck, it has access to every good level 6 that can evolve from red or blue Digimon in the game. And a couple of the options you'll see are right here. Mirage Galgamon, who is by far and large the most loved card in the entire game, alongside Medieval Gallimon, who is probably the second most loved card in the game right now, alongside cards that are actually in this deck's thematic traits, which is Apollomon. So he's actually one of the Digimon who canonically belongs with the Sun and Moon cards, or the Light Fang and Nightclaw cards, whereas Mirage Galgamon and Medieval Gallimon are just kind of like, yeah, they're there. Additionally, it's very resourceful with card draw and memory. All of its level 4s give you card draw in some respect, level 3s and level 2s, and some of the level 4s can also give you memory. And so with the bare minimum amount of memory, they can pretty much get to level 6 in a single turn. It's really hard to stop them, but there is a way, and that is their weakness, and that is floodgates that stop your opponent from gaining memory from Digimon effects, or effects that are not from Tamers. So I talked about floodgates before. There are some floodgates that reduce play cost that hurt Royal Knights, like the Psychemon and Chikurumon. And in this case, there are floodgates that stop your opponent from gaining memory outside of Tamer effects. So they can only gain memory from Tamer effect. And that's one of the things that this deck can slow this deck down. So that's Galaxy Toolbox. We're actually moving pretty quickly here. The next one, we talked about Imperial Digimon before, but Imperial Digimon actually has 2 decks in this game. There's like the blue-green version, and then there's the red-purple version, which we're going to aptly call Imperial Digimon Virus. So this is one of the newer decks in the game. It came out in BT20, or rather, it came to prominence in BT20. Some of the cards came out earlier, but they got like a new set of cards that just like really put them over the top. Game plan here is really simple. You trash level 5, and then you can use your level 4 cards to play level 3s and then DNA into a level 4. So all the Imperial Digimon cards seem to revolve around the concept of DNA digivolving, where you take 2 Digimon and evolve them into 1, and you get to take both stacks from those Digimon and put them together. But this deck, in order to get to their like boss monsters, they have to DNA digivolve 2 times. And the new cards they got access to let them do that really quickly, like within a single turn. And then once you get to your level 6s, you can essentially just raise your opponent's entire board and make lots of security checks at the same time. Some of the key cards in the deck. First up is the Wormmon. This guy in the later game is like your one card who can enable your entire combo in order to get to a level 6. His effect seems so simple, but he just evolves from a card in the trash at cost -1, but that sets off a chain reaction that just, it gets wild. Hopefully you get a chance to see this if this deck pops up on stream this weekend. Also, Dinobimon, the level 5, or like Dinobimon. People get mad at me in comments when I put the wrong intonation on there. But Dinobimon, he's a level 5 who, I told you that you have to DNA Digivolve 2 times with this deck. Once at the level 4s and then once again at the level 5s. And this Dinobimon lets you play a second level 5 so you can DNA Digivolve immediately by just getting into him. So once you get to him, basically getting to level 6 is really easy because he plays the second level 5 you need and you can immediately DNA. And then finally, the Imperial Digimon Fighter mode, who deletes an opponent's opponent's Digimon who are weaker than him, and he discards security while attacking. So this guy is kind of, and because he has a lot of effects to gain DP, and the level 6 underneath him, the Imperial Digimon Dragon mode, which I don't have pictured here, also gives him plus DP boost. It's pretty much any Digimon on board. He pretty much just kills anything. Some of the strengths of the deck, the speed is absolutely incredible. I think one of the things that I was almost taken aback by was how quickly they can set up a board like that. Like I said before, a single Wormmon, that one little Wormmon card, and a few cards in trash can enable the entire combo to get to a level 6. And then if your stack is destroyed, really similarly to the blue-green Imperial Digimon deck, they also have partition with their Dinobimon. And on top of that, they also have deletion effects. So no matter how you get rid of this card or that stack, they're going to be left with something on the board. Whether, again, if you hit by battle, and they get the deletion effects. If you hit them through effects, then partition pops. There's just so much good stuff there. And it means their boards are incredibly sticky. It's like flypaper. Their fellows are stuck down there. Also, the combo of Imperial Digimon Dragon mode, which you see right here, and the Imperial Digimon Fighter mode is very good at erasing entire boards. The Dragon mode has a crazy effect where it deletes everything except one Digimon. And then the Fighter mode deletes one Digimon. So, you know, it's it's like wiping their board with extra steps. Yeah, some of the weaknesses, defensively, pretty weak. So the offense, as I hope that I've sold on you so far, is that the offense for this deck is crazy. Defensively, though, not really much to shake a stick at. Not really any blockers. Security is usually pretty frail. They don't typically run like option cards that make you like afraid to attack their security or anything like that. So if it's not their turn, they are not really doing that much. I'm sure you could probably tech in a couple ace cards here or there, but like doing so, you take away from your offense by diluting your card pool so that it's harder to actually get your offensive combos off. Still no substitute for the Promo Chandramon? Yeah, nope. Not that I know of. So this guy, the Promo Chandramon is like one of the crazy cards that enables you to do almost anything you want on a single given turn. He is pretty pricey right now, although I guess his price may come down a little bit when he gets introduced and when they do reprints. We'll have to see how much that actually goes down though. But yeah, very, very new deck. We got to see it in Japan. I think that's the only time it's really popped up on streams in recent memory because it really just came out. Rounding out, I think, or at least nearing the end here, we've got Velgr Takemikazuchi. Whew. What can I say about this deck? The game plan is very simple. Collect level 3, a level 4, a level 5, and a Tamer in hand. And you need to trash a level 7 Velgr Takemikazuchi and a level 6 Kazuchimon. And then you basically execute a combo and win the game. Basically, the entire game is you setting up pieces where they need to be. And some of the key cards for the deck are, of course, the boss monster himself, Velgr Takemikazuchi. He is the boss dog. He recovers. He trashes security. He manipulates the memory gauge like no other card in the game. And that is to some people's chagrin right now. And he is a very, very powerful card, despite actually not being that expensive. So alongside him are the Velgr level 6, who he enables you to play the Kazuchimon from trash for free. So there's another card called Kazuchimon, is also level 6, who's not pictured here. By getting into him, you can play another level 6 from trash for free. And then he also, whenever he's in sources, whenever you evolve into the Velgr Takemikazuchi, his inheritance effect lets you keep your turn until the memory counter hits 3 on your opponent's side rather than 0. So he actually lets you get longer turns. And then finally, probably the strongest card in the deck, which is his level 2 Baomon, lets you Digivolve into cards that you discard from your hand. And that effect is not once per turn, so you can keep doing it in a single set of plays, where pretty much every card in this deck's line, or at least every level in this deck's line, has a way to discard cards. So you can discard your way up to the cards that you need to see. Some of the strengths. Honestly, there's not much that other decks can do to stop Velgr during their explosive turns. I think only very recently, like in the most recent set, have they really started to print cards that can stop them mid-combo or do something to prevent them from just like OTKing you on their super explosive turn. But again, still very new, probably some unexplored territory, and we may not have seen enough time for folks to come up with reputable counters. Also, the more you explore the potential combos of this deck, the more you're rewarded for finding creative ways to win. I think there's a really talented player by the name of Benjamin, who I believe won at the Asia Finals, who really showed off how strong this deck can be in the hands of someone who's actually explored like all of like the combos that this deck can offer. We saw him getting up like 2 Velgr Takemikazuchi in a single turn, and that is just backbreaking for pretty much every other deck in the game. And so while I think it's very easy to see like the combo to win most games, players who like can really execute and can find other lines to win rather than if their like basic line doesn't work are definitely rewarded. So weaknesses here, as we saw in Australia, any mistake during your combo usually ends up in an immediate game loss. It's tragic, and you can be damn sure your opponent is not going to let you take the move back either. So yeah, be very careful how you make moves, and be very careful what your opponent has on the board in case they have something to like prevent you from doing something. And so that's the 7 decks that I talked about or I showed off here that you're probably going to see during the Worlds this weekend. Again, BT20 is relatively new, and I think that would be really cool if we got some folks out there definitely like cooking something up. I think with BT20's presence, there are a lot of cards that can do something about some of the decks that we've seen in the past. As Bandai started to print more like counterable effects to some of like the strongest decks in the game in the past. It'll be interesting to see if anyone can bring any of those counters to the forefront. Speaking of, though, there are a couple of honorable mentions that I didn't have a chance to talk about very much in this TED Talk or this quick primer. First of all, Talmon Loop or Sakuyamon. This is a deck that utilizes like the Fox-based Tamers, yellow Sakuyamon or Talmon cards in order to play lots of Digimon with options. And they can play some pretty incredible Digimon and do some pretty incredible things with cards like Kazuhamon, Talmon Ace card, and the Chaosmon from BT20, as well as the Shine Greymon Ruin mode. They can do some crazy stuff. The issue is they take a little bit of time to attack, and that usually stops them from winning in some cases. Next up is Mother/Security Control. I don't think that this deck has a crazy shot, but I think my opinion there is mostly based on the region that I play in, which is Japan, which has historically not been very strong using Security Control. And last year at Worlds, Security Control won. So I can't count this deck out, and I don't plan to do that this year. Also, Mother D Reaper and Shoto Kazama are a devilish duo. Galantmon, I am a big fan of this deck, and Galantmon X Antibody is incredible. He has some crazy attack power, really high DP, can pretty much pierce any Digimon in the game, no problem, and he also hits security pretty hard. So the offense of that deck cannot be understated. Also, in the same vein, Seadramon. And this might seem like I copy pasted, but it's not a mistake. From what I've heard, and you folks at the beginning of the stream saw me trying to piece this together myself, but I don't think I'm doing it correctly. Seadramon has some really good disruption effects in the Tamer hate thanks to the Seadramon X Antibody, who can stop Seadramon or Tamers from suspending for a turn, alongside some nice bouncing effects. They've got some ways to play Digimon from sources to gain memory, and then absorb them back again to become active again. And when you take all of that and combine it with a Galantmon X Antibody at the top end, you get a lot of offensive power. So there's a really great offense and defense mix here. And again, I haven't seen it much myself, and I'm still trying to explore like exactly what's going on. But I've heard some whispers, and there was a guy in Japan who is qualified for Worlds who is seriously considering this deck. So it'll be interesting to see this. Also, Leviamon. With the game having so many cards that play Digimon by effects or Tamers by effects now, this alligator back from EX5, we will never stop paying for their crimes, by the way. This alligator from from EX5 only seems better and better and better because he just pops out of the trash and just starts eating Digimon as soon as they play stuff by effects. So yeah, these are my honorable mentions. Any other crazy decks folks might come out of the woodwork with? I have no idea. BT20 is still so new, and it's kind of a cool time, right? Like, I think that if you have a World, it's really interesting to have it when a set has just come out, because I think that's where you get like the best show for the spectators. That will be, I think they should try to aim to do that, because I think it also rewards creative deck building, where if somebody just ends up going in with like stuff they won with in the past and some new stuff is in there's some new like spice in there in the new sets, then you have the people who really like take the time to quickly and efficiently explore the new cards, really put on a great show.